Here we go. Hey everybody, good evening and welcome to Tahoe's Fabulous Dream, episode number 9. All right, so good evening everybody. I am live on this beautiful Monday night, live from New York. I am here once again with my beautiful girlfriend, Mary. Our relationship has made it to yet another episode. Isn't that amazing? Oh, I think you're on mute.
Crickets.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, sorry, I have a little bit of a sore throat now. I think I'm getting sick.
Sorry, I think I gave you the bid.
Yeah, it looks like we're gonna have to quarantine. Yeah. So tonight I wanted to have a stream because we had an interesting talk this afternoon, and I was thinking like, wow, we have some really good points here. You know, this would make for a really good live stream. So the topic of tonight's stream, it's tenable ways that we can fix our really broken two-party political system here in the United States. And basically, so guys, I'm just going to tell you right now, if you are on the extreme left of the political aisle, just a warning in advance, you are going to really hate this show. Also, if you are on the extreme right of the political aisle, you are also really going to hate this show because we're kind of gonna crap on both parties and just what they do to what they get wrong, what they tell people, you know, to get people to back them that just really isn't true. And what we need to do, a plan that I have to meet in the middle. And you know, I have 33 subscribers, so I think, you know, we can really make some change in the world. I think we can really get some momentum behind this.
Absolutely.
So, and I know everybody's going to say, you know, oh, well, you know, if you have all the answers, why don't you guys, you know, run for president or everything? This was just amusing today, you know, when we were talking earlier, and we were talking about, you know, how broken things are, you know, how it's always the Republicans always blame, you know, well, you know, it's the people on welfare, you know, they're, you know, the reason our taxes are so high is because we have to support everybody on welfare. And then you have, you know, the liberals who are saying, well, you know, if the billionaires would just pay their share in taxes, you know, the welfare wouldn't be such a big deal. And the answer really is both. I think we really hit the nail on the head. We need to make a system where people cannot abuse the welfare system, right? Where we don't have a welfare state, and you don't have people who are on welfare actually living better than the middle class, right? Where they have, you know, more in their fridge than a guy who's doing a trade or you know, a new teacher. But at the same time, you know, we need people to pay taxes. We need billionaires to pay taxes. And you know, recently we had Donald Trump's tax return come out. We know that he paid $750 last year. And that much or lesser over the past 15 years. So clearly, you know, an abuse of the system because Donald Trump was claiming losses on several businesses and used that as a loophole to not really pay his fair share in taxes. And if he's doing it, we can only extrapolate, you know, that we've got most billionaires are doing the same thing just because they can afford, you know, the corporate attorney who can afford them that luxury and exploit that loophole. I don't even know what the loopholes are because obviously I'm not an attorney myself. The thing is, we as Americans, right, we know they're doing it and we know that they don't plan to stop. So what we really need to do is meet in the middle somewhere and make legislation to get those loopholes out of the way. I think like I remember learning about this in economics too, that what they do is basically like their business reports a loss because the billionaire, right, or the CEO or what have you, is a separate entity of his business. So basically, on paper, he doesn't pay himself anything, or he doesn't take a salary, right? It's all stock in the business. That's his salary. And then if the business reports a loss, basically you don't pay taxes. You're basically exempt at that point. There's some way around it. I don't know. You used to go to law school. Maybe you know about it better than I do.
Yeah, but I failed out, so I don't think I'm going to be able to offer you much insight into that.
Womp womp. Yeah, if we have a corporate attorney out there who watches this show, and we probably don't because this show is literally garbage. But if we did, we would love to have somebody come on and tell us, how the exploitation works of the system there. But it got me thinking, right? That both so. Republicans are angry at the people who abuse the welfare system, and the Democrats are angry at the billionaires. And in reality, realistically, we should be outraged at both, because if you think about it, who's getting fucked? The middle class. It's you were saying that I believe in at least where we live, you need to make fewer than $18,000 to qualify for welfare. Is that correct?
I don't know if it's correct. That's just a number I pulled out of my head. I'd have to fact check it.
I had thought that it was below 32,000, since that was the national average.
I know it's supposed to be below the poverty line, but I don't know what they consider below the poverty line in New York.
I can look it up on a national average, but yeah, it's probably for us it's by state. What we do know is that people exploit it because they'll live in the same household but not be legally married. One person works, and then another person can claim that they're below the poverty line and collect welfare. And you know what brought this to my attention? I used to have I was a cashier at a food store, okay, as my first job. And I grew up in a pretty affluent neighborhood. And the number of people who would buy food with food stamps and then get into a Mercedes was astronomical. Like you wouldn't believe it. And you might think, well, Jay, who are you to judge? You don't know that person's circumstance. Maybe they had an uncle who died and left them that Mercedes. But the number of times that I saw it, just I couldn't really deny what was happening anymore. It's like, yeah, you have people who are affluent, who have somebody who doesn't work, and maybe they don't maybe they don't get married to make that person not part of the household. They're finding ways around it. They're definitely finding ways around it. 'Cause the people, they'd come in, they'd have nice clothes, they'd have a nice car, but they'd still, be using food stamps and WIC checks. So it's like, how are they doing this?
So I'm on benefits.gov to see what the qualifications are, and they ask you a couple series of questions to see if you're the head of the household, to see if you have dependents, and then to see if any members of your family or household have any of the following conditions: hereditary blood disorder, drug or alcohol dependency, HIV or AIDS, limb function or length differences, limb loss, mental illness, paralysis, if they're permanently disabled from a service-connected condition, pregnant, have spina bifida, end-stage renal disease, if they've given birth during the last 6 months, if they're breastfeeding an infant, if they're pre-diabetic or at risk for type 2 diabetes, or if they have a child with ADHD.
That's a decent amount of criteria.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, there's definitely ways that people abuse it, and if anybody has some anecdotes, or you want to remain anonymous and come on the show and tell us how you've done it, please feel free. But the other tenet, right, is we've got the top 1%. We've got the billionaires not paying taxes, and that also is a humongous issue. And what I think, the extreme left, they're you take a candidate like Bernie Sanders, who's really, really far to the left, where he's a democratic socialist and wants to tax the top 1% earners at I believe it was 35%. And this is to the Republicans watching, right? You guys realize that Bernie Sanders' tax plan is not going to screw you as bad as you think, right? I'm not here to to say we should vote for Bernie Sanders. I actually would not vote for Bernie Sanders because his plan is a little too extreme for me. But let me just break something down here, okay? If you are making $100,000, you're not going to be, you're already being taxed, 20 to 25%, right? Yeah, that's not going to change. The point is to tax the people, making multi six figures and $1 billion. We want to tax them at 35. Now here's my message to the Democrats why that's unrealistic, because you're going to get brain drain. You're going to get the people who have those corporations. They're going to base their corporation overseas where they're not subject to a 35% tax. We're not only going to lose jobs, we're going to lose revenue. They're still not going to pay the taxes we need them to pay on it. So, we can forget that. That's not tenable at all. So what I would say is that what we need from our billionaires is if we were even able to tax, because we know that they don't pay taxes right now. They find loopholes and exploit them. So if we were actually realistically able to get, 10% out of our billionaires, what would that do for our revenue stream? What would that do?
I just sent you the income requirements
For welfare?
Yeah, for New York for cash assistance.
Did you send that to me on Facebook or on?
No, I sent it via text.
Oh, okay. Let me pull that up. Okay. So annual adjusted gross income. So for a family of three in New York, it's $42,000 and below. Well, $42,660 and below.
Mm-hmm.
Which, I mean, if you're raising a kid on an annual income of $42,000, that's you're in a tight spot. The problem is, right? Let's say you're making $45,000. Now you don't qualify, right?
Right.
And life is actually now harder for you than the person making $42,000 because that person basically has food, taken care of.
They have food taken care of. They have benefits for each one of their children. They're not paying for health insurance because they're eligible for free health insurance. It's not a bad deal.
No, it's not. And but anyway, I don't want to go too far off of the topic of billionaires because I know I was in a good thought here, right? So if we were able to realistically no, I mean, I needed that information, and we will come back to that. I just on the topic of the billionaires, right? So we know that they don't pay. They pretty much pay nothing now because they exploit loopholes. But if we were to tax them at 35%, as Mr. Sanders proposes, that's just going to get them to leave. And we're going to get a political concept known as brain drain, where the talent basically just leaves because they go somewhere else where they can reap the full benefit of their invention or their talent or whatever. I mean, we've seen it in a lot of communist countries. Really, if you look at it, what great inventions have really come out of a purely communistic country? Not much, because anybody who has anything to contribute isn't going to go somewhere where they can't reap the reward of that. And I do think that that's fair. I do think that's fair. If you're going to get screwed, you need to leave. But realistically, we do need our billionaires to really contribute and to pay taxes. So what tenable solution I think is to realistically expect 10% from them. So we were able to get that. Think about if we were even able to get 10% of Jeff Bezos's $240 billion. What would that do for the economy? We wouldn't even have to tax the middle class as much. Jeff Bezos would still be likely the richest man in the world, right?
The sad thing is, I don't know how long it would take to repay China, because how many trillions of dollars do we owe China?
Oh yeah, well our debt to China is astronomical. We're in the trillions now. Let's you know what? Just for fun, let's Google that number. United States debt to China. We currently owe China about 1.1 trillion.
Jeez.
Okay, well, no, I mean, listen, this would not fix the problems overnight, but it would be a step in the right direction. Mm-hmm. So I think the conversation needs to be we need to get a coalition, right? Get the people who are these either captains of industry or robber barons together and be like, look, we know you guys. It's a system right now where where you guys don't pay taxes. We know you guys, report whatever, and then you end up, exploiting loopholes. Warren Buffett even admitted to it that he doesn't pay taxes. That he has attorneys who make it so it doesn't happen. So what we need you guys to do is we realistically need 10%, right? You guys are multi-billionaires. You're still going to be, the top, 1% in the world. You're still going to be filthy rich. But what we really need from you is 10%, because that's better than nothing. We're basically getting nothing now. So the burden of the taxes is on the middle class, because the people who are, when I look at what you sent me here to qualify for welfare, right? And again, this is New York. For an annual gross adjusted income for a family of one, right, is $24,984. So that person really isn't paying much in taxes. That person's taxes aren't going a long way anyway. It's like if we were to get Jeff Bezos to just pay 10% of his annual income, right, or his corporation's annual income, what would that pump into the economy? How many average Joes, right, who are making $24,000 would have to pay 25% under Bernie Sanders' plan, right? How many of those people would that make up for if we just got one billionaire to pay even 10% in taxes?
Exactly.
So let's just see. We Denzel Washington voice 10% right there in the cup. Thanks, Mike. But yeah, so that's what we would need. That's what we need to do. So that's and I know the Republicans. What I hate about the Republican Party, right? And mind you, like I am, by and large, I consider myself to the right of center. What I hate about that is, that what people like Trump and Mitch McConnell is, oh yeah, it's it's the welfare state. That's the reason, that we don't have any money. I mean, that's part of it. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, those people need to, like the people who are exploiting it need to get jobs. They need to, people who are working illegally need to pay taxes. Yes, I agree. But we, on the flip side of the coin, we also need rich people to pay taxes too. So this is where I'm saying, like, this two-party political system that just perpetually points the finger. It's the billionaires. It's the illegal aliens. It's the people exploiting welfare. They're actually both right. So neither a purely capitalistic state works, because then we have too many losers. Right, we have too many people on the bottom who, if you're born into a bad situation, you can't get out of it. We talked about this earlier. It's like, if you're born, if you're born into a bad situation, you don't have access to a good education. You don't have your parents supporting you. It's like, the chances of you, going to college or being successful in trade school and having a good career are greatly diminished. And you can say, like, oh, we all know an outlier. We all know a person who did it. We all know a person who overcame a lot in their lifetime. But that's what we have to realize, is if we're being honest with ourselves, is that's the outlier. Most people who are born into a bad situation, it's really, really hard for them to escape the situation. And for every one that does, there's 9 that don't. So maybe something to consider. Yeah. So, and then you have the flip side of the coin, where you do have the people who have it worked out. I don't know. Are you comfortable sharing the story you told me earlier, but not obviously, say names or anything?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I used to work in a retail job when I was in college, and one of the women that I worked with drove a brand new Cadillac Escalade, the extended one, and she and her boyfriend had a couple kids together, and she told me that she only worked part-time at the store because if she made more than a certain amount, they would take away all of her food stamps and any formula that she received for her children and any other government assistance. So she had it all figured out.
Yeah, it's just like, you have, they like, people plan it out to exploit the system. And I've been, right. So a couple of years ago, I mean, now I'm doing a little better now, but I'm far from wealthy or made. I don't even own a home. I have an apartment. But a couple of years ago, I just had moved out on my own, and I was making about $16 an hour. I was making, like, it was something like $32,000 a year. Well, I get bonuses too, so it's maybe like $40,000 a year. And I was basically living paycheck to paycheck. So I didn't have a lot of food in my fridge. I really couldn't go out with my friends. And I went to somebody's house who was in a similar situation. They didn't make quite as much, but they had their. I knew that they were, had food stamps and welfare, and they were, their fridge was more packed than mine. And I was like, it's kind of like, at the moment, it's almost infuriating, right? As much as it angers you at the billionaire who doesn't pay taxes, and you want to smack that person, because it's like, dude, like, if you even gave up 10% of your fucking income, you could fund an entire, city to get new infrastructure, right? Or something like that. Or you could repave an entire city. I would have no potholes in my road for the next 3 years. But at the same time, we have people like, I know you guys know, a lot of you guys are familiar with First from Incel Mannix. He's told me that he works about 80 hours a week, and he's scraping by to, pay for his his apartment. And when you're working, I was doing the same thing at this point. I was working 2 jobs, almost 80 hours a week, one in the daytime, one at nighttime, and I was worked to the bone and tired and felt like crap. But I didn't qualify. I wouldn't qualify for any type of welfare or food stamps at that point. So it's like, that's not. And I'm not saying there aren't people who legitimately need welfare, because there are people who are disabled, and there are people who can't work. And I'm not saying we need to take that away altogether, but we need some type of legislation. We need some type of legislation to prevent that type of abuse from people who do actually work. I'm sorry, from people who do work, but they, like, don't work a certain number of hours, because they know then they won't qualify for welfare. People who have a system figured out, to exploit it, because they're making it's the middle class. It's the people in the middle, the people, between that, like, $45,000 to $100,000 range, who are getting screwed. They're bearing the burden for everybody, and that's really not fair.
Nope,
To be clear,
certainly
too.
not.
My Aramar says, yeah, I've been there at the 80 hours a week grind. Yeah, it sucks, dude. The 2 full-time jobs thing. I'm in a position where I don't need to do that anymore, but I used to have to, and it wasn't fun. It wasn't fun, but I lucked out. I made it. And so we're clear too, guys. If you're making 6 figures, you're in the top 10% of earners nationally. So if you think about it, everybody wants to go to school. Everybody wants to, get that degree so they can make that 6-figure job. But to be clear, even if you get that, if you're making $100,000 a year annually or more, you are in the top 10% of earners nationally. So that should show you how broken of a system we have. That really, like, if you're to be, that's a point where people consider people successful at $100,000. That's only 10% of the population. Most people are stuck in that middle, they don't qualify for welfare. So they're actually supporting the burden of the country, really. And I'm, if anyone wants to challenge me on this, come on. And I'm going to leave a lot of the finding numbers to you guys. I don't have the exact, but it's something like only 10% of the country earns $100,000 or more, and then you have your top 1%, earning multi-millions and billions. So it shows you guys how steep of a curve it is. That most people are just in the middle and barely scraping by, and that's how we're getting this. Emerging of a super wealthy class, and then basically if you're not in that top 10%, you're basically poor. That's the way we're going with inflation. So the topic of tonight's stream is tenable solutions. So here is what I would propose. I'm just going to get right down to it, since this is what people came to see. My solution is forming a new political party, an alternative to both the Democrats and the Republicans, because they've been at gridlock for years and years. Like, no, electing a reality TV host who fails at business is not the answer, and it's also not the answer to elect a guy who's held public office for more than 40 years and brought about no real change, because he's no different than Trump. He just cares about his rich buddies and isn't going to do anything to help average Joe like you or me. So what I'm proposing is a third political party. If I were, making a platform for the party, I'd probably call it the American Integrity Party. And the tenets of the party would be this. We need to find really, really good corporate attorneys to review and pass and get into the House for review. New laws that eliminate the ability for the really rich, the elite, to not pay taxes. We need to find a way to make sure that they're giving us at least 10%, not the 35 like Bernie Sanders wants, because then they're just going to leave, but a realistic 10%. On the flip side, we also need new legislation that prevents people from pulling off welfare schemes and screwing people out of money that way. What we need to do is keep everybody honest. Part of my solution for that, I know we talked about there's a lot of ways to scam the system, is that if you are actually on welfare, that maybe it would create some jobs if we had a social worker, check in with the welfare recipient and basically, try to help that person get a job, help them, make resumes, help them go on interviews, check their progress in that regard. Because there are, like I said, there are people who can't work, right, for various reasons. I'm not proposing we take away welfare from those people, but there are plenty of people who abuse it or only work a certain amount where they can still qualify for welfare, and once again screw the middle class. So if we had a social worker,
or they take positions that are off the books, whether it's some type of, construction or working in a restaurant or something of that nature, where they don't have to claim an income, and then they can also apply for benefits.
Yeah, we talked about that earlier too. It's the off the books, people working off the books. Now, listen, I've done it, so I'm not going to be a hypocrite here. We've all done it because it's a way, it's an easy way to make money and not pay taxes on it and exploit the system. Right now, obviously, we have the Fed looking kind of the other way. But if we went after businesses that employed that practice, that might be a way to stop that. Work with district attorneys to really go after businesses who pay people off the books, and because if the businesses were being fined heavily and it was pretty strict fines, I don't think they would continue doing that.
Right.
If we de-incentivize that.
I agree.
So those would be probably the two biggest tenets: is rewriting welfare law and rewriting corporate tax law to keep everybody honest, and also creating some jobs in having those social workers, who follow up with welfare recipients. As not to take it away from the people who truly need it. And then the other thing would, of course, be term limits on the House and the Senate. Ridiculous that we don't have term limits on those things. We have people, who stay in office 20, 30 years and just perpetuate the same nonsense. So I think we need to get rid of that too. We have term limits for the president. Why don't we have term limits for, most public office? It really doesn't make sense.
I agree. I mean, Nancy Pelosi's been in office for 20 or 21 years?
Something like that. She came into office when I was in middle school. Well, no, she became Speaker of the House when I was in middle school. Mm-hmm. She'd been in Congress for a long time, in fact.
Yeah.
Look that up. Since 1987 was when she first went into the house.
So that's over 30 years.
Yep. Yeah, but she became Speaker of the House. I want to say it was like 2002, 2003.
Wow. A lot of good that's done us.
Yeah, she needs to go too. But yeah, term limits would help that. And then that tax plan, tax the rich at 10%. End the welfare scheme, and maybe tax everybody else. A realistic like 15% in the middle class, because that's the biggest problem. That like people don't see that like what's going on in the world today. There's a lot of political reasons for it, but the real root cause is income inequality. We had Occupy Wall Street protests 10 years ago. That was people, it was men, it was women, it was blacks, it was whites, it was everybody kind of coming together. Saying like, hey, people on top, make way have way too much of control, way too much of the resources. It's 80% of the income is earned by 1%. I mean, how can society survive with a system like that? And actually,
It's not sustainable.
that's what I wanted to call out. So we already trashed the Democrats. I want to trash the Republicans now.
Have at
So
it.
so the Republicans, right? They're always blaming the people who don't pay taxes, the welfare fraudsters, people who are here illegally who don't pay taxes. And it's like, dude, your party doesn't care about you. They really don't. Donald Trump doesn't give a shit about average Joes. He again he's done nothing to get rich people in who own corporations. He's done nothing to get his rich friends to pay more in taxes. It was never about that. But the Republicans politicians get people get the voters hyped up, to get mad at those people. And it's like, what have you done to help? We were talking about how Donald Trump, for example, signed the executive order to stop payroll tax for the fourth quarter. But what good has that done? Because most companies aren't even withholding it, because they know, because it was never guaranteed that we're not gonna owe that on our tax returns.
Right.
So
And it
so
wasn't
what?
even that much to begin with. I think when all is said and done, if they cut the payroll tax, I think the average person would see $100 or $200 back in a paycheck, which would be nice. It would cover health insurance, but other than that, you're not really getting too far. That's not solving anyone's, bills or paying anyone's rent.
Well, I mean, for like an average Joe, 100 to 200 per paycheck. I mean, that's 200 to 400 in a month. So, for
It
some
may cover
people, I mean, that's like
groceries.
for some people that's groceries. That's a car payment. I mean, I don't think it's insignificant. But here's my point. Here's what's dishonest about Trump is he knew damn well nobody was going to see that money. He did
Right.
that to make average people think, oh, look, I care about you. I'm signing an executive order that's going to benefit you. But at the end of the day, like everybody knows the companies are just going to withhold it anyway, because they're not going to participate in that because they have the option to. I know your company hasn't, mine hasn't.
Right.
Because they're afraid of the outrage, because there is no guarantee. There's nothing written in that executive order about us not owing that come tax time, having to pay it all back. And the Senate is saying, like, because the Senate was angry at Trump for doing that, because they're saying like, well, that's how we fund Social Security. And obviously, we do need to fund Social Security. I mean, I don't know if we do, because us millennials aren't getting any. So but we care about our boomers, right?
I care about my parents. I know they've worked very hard and that they've seen a lot of money taken out over the years for Social Security.
Right. So
my dad
obviously
is
will want.
my dad
No,
is
go ahead.
collecting Social Security right now, but he's also working, and the job that he's working in, well, both jobs that he's working in are taking out money for Social Security. Like, this system is broken.
Yeah.
The man
So
worked his
by
whole life.
So by Trump doing that, he's actually screwing over the boomers.
Yeah, pretty
If
much.
if you notice, even the boomers who voted for Trump, that decision was not popular among them.
Right.
But it hasn't. My point is, it hasn't helped anybody, and it was just a ruse to make people think like, "Oh, look, I'm trying to help."
Right. Well,
It's not.
I think he was tired of the gridlock with the Senate not approving another stimulus check because the Democrats were asking for, I think they were asking for the world, and they were not willing to settle. So again, it comes down to where is this money coming from? Like the middle class is going to have to foot the bill yet again.
Yeah, as they always do.
Mm-hmm.
Which, yeah,
I mean, the cost of living has gone up. The cost of food has gone up. People's wages have not caught up to this. So I don't know where they expect people to get this money from. We used to have the lower middle class, average middle class, and upper middle class. And I think, unfortunately, if we keep going in the direction that we're going, you're only going to see lower middle class or working poor, and then the wealthy. I don't think there's going to necessarily be a middle class anymore. And then if that happens, who's supposed to pay the taxes then?
we are going back to a time where it's like we're almost going back to like feudalism,
Mm-hmm.
right? We're almost going back to a time where you have the lord of the manor, right, which is like the Jeff Bezos elites, and then you just have the serfs. You have the
president.
Oh, there's a bad echo.